Music Theory 1, Part 8, with Odessa Balan. Diving into the building blocks of music. Earlier in this series, you learned about the different kinds of notes, clefs, and time signatures. You learned about the circle of fourths and fifths, the major keys, and their relative minors. You also learned about intervals, chords, and their function in music. Now it's time to delve into closely related keys and how to harmonize songs. Closely related key signatures, sharps. In part 2 of this series, you learned about the circle of fifths for the sharp key signatures. As we go around this circle, it is important to notice each key signature and the keys on either side of each key signature. For example, if we look at G major, we will notice that C major is right before G major and D major is right after G major. There is only one note that is different between G major and C major, F sharp. There is only one note that is different between G major and D major, C sharp. Let's look at some other closely related sharp key signatures. D major is closely related to G major, only one note is different, C sharp, and A major, only one note is different, G sharp. A major is closely related to D major, only one note is different, G sharp, and E major, only one note is different, D sharp. E major is closely related to A major, only one note is different, D sharp, and B major, only one note is different, A sharp. More closely related sharp key signatures. B major is closely related to E major, only one note is different, A sharp, and F sharp major, only one note is different, E sharp. F sharp major is closely related to B major, only one note is different, E sharp, and C sharp major, only one note is different, B sharp. Let's look at how the closely related scales of the sharp key signatures have notes that are overlapping. Here's the C major scale. And here's the G major scale. The last four notes of the C major scale are the first four notes of the G major scale. There is only one note that is different between these two scales, and that's F sharp. Let's look at the G major scale and the D major scale. Here's the G major scale. And here's the D major scale. The last four notes of the G major scale are the first four notes of the D major scale. Only one note is different between these two scales, and that's C sharp. Let's look at the D major scale and the A major scale. Here's the D major scale. And here's the A major scale. The last four notes of the D major scale are the first four notes of the A major scale. Only one note is different between these two scales, and that's G sharp. Let's look at the A major scale and the E major scale. Here's the A major scale. And here's the E major scale. The last four notes of the A major scale are the first four notes of the E major scale. Only one note is different between these two scales, and that's D sharp. Let's look at the E major scale and the B major scale. Here's the E major scale. And here's the B major scale. The last four notes of the E major scale are the first four notes of the B major scale. Only one note is different between these two scales, and that's A sharp. Let's look at the B major scale and the F sharp major scale. Here's the B major scale. And here's the F sharp major scale. The last four notes of the B major scale are the first four notes of the F sharp major scale. Only one note is different between these two scales, and that's E sharp. Let's look at the F sharp major scale and the C sharp major scale. Here's the F sharp major scale. And here's the C sharp major scale. The last four notes of the F sharp major scale are the first four notes of the C sharp major scale. Only one note is different between these two scales, and that's B sharp. Notice the pattern? The one note that is different between the first scale and the next scale is always the seventh note of the next scale in line in sharp key signatures. The seventh note of each sharp scale after C major is the sharp that is added to the key signature as the number of sharps per key go up in number. So the different note between C major and G major is F sharp, which is the seventh note in the G major scale and the first sharp in the order of sharps. The different note between G major and D major is C sharp, which is the seventh note of the D major scale and the second sharp in line in the order of sharps, and so on. Pop quiz. Please pause the video to see if you can answer these questions correctly. Don't worry, the answers are on the next slide. How did you do? Did you get all the answers right? Shared chords. Closely related keys also have chords that are the same in both keys. Let's look at C major and G major. Here's C major. Here's G major. Notice how the 5 chord in C major, which is the G major chord, is the 1 chord in G major. Notice how the 6 chord in C major, which is the A minor chord, is the 2 chord in G major. The 1 chord in C major, which is the C major chord, is the 4 chord in G major. The 3 chord in C major, which is the E minor chord, is the 6 chord in G major. Let's look at G major and D major. Here's G major. And here's D major. The 1 chord in G major, which is the G major chord, is the 4 chord in D major. The 3 chord in G major, which is the B minor chord, is the 6 chord in D major. The 5 chord in G major, which is the D major chord, is the 1 chord in D major. The 6 chord in G major, which is the E minor chord, is the 2 chord in D major. Let's look at D major and A major. Here's D major. And here's A major. The 1 chord in D major, which is the D major chord, is the 4 chord in A major. The 3 chord in D major, which is the F sharp minor chord, is the 6 chord in A major. The 5 chord in D major, which is the A major chord, is the 1 chord in A major. The 6 chord in D major, which is the B minor chord, is the 2 chord in A major. Let's look at A major and E major. Here's A major. And here's E major. The 1 chord in A major, which is the A major chord, is the 4 chord in E major. The 3 chord in A major, which is the C sharp minor chord, is the 6 chord in E major. The 5 chord in A major, which is the E major chord, is the 1 chord in E major. The 6 chord in A major, which is the F sharp minor chord, is the 2 chord in E major. Let's look at E major and B major. Here's E major. And here's B major. The 1 chord in E major, which is the E major chord, is the 4 chord in B major. The 3 chord in E major, which is the G sharp minor chord, is the 6 chord in B major. The 5 chord in E major, which is the B major chord, is the 1 chord in B major. And the 6 chord in E major, which is the C sharp minor chord, is the 2 chord in B major. Let's look at B major and F sharp major. Here's B major. And here's F sharp major. The 1 chord in B major, which is the B major chord, is the 4 chord in F sharp major. The 3 chord in B major, which is the D sharp minor chord, is the 6 chord in F sharp major. The 5 chord in B major, which is the F sharp major chord, is the 1 chord in F sharp major. And the 6 chord in B major, which is the G sharp minor chord, is the 2 chord in F sharp major. Let's look at F sharp major and C sharp major. Here's F sharp major. And here's C sharp major. The 1 chord in F sharp major, which is the F sharp major chord, is the 4 chord in C sharp major. The 3 chord in F sharp major, which is the A sharp minor chord, is the 6 chord in C sharp major. The 5 chord in F sharp major, which is the C sharp major chord, is the 1 chord in C sharp major. And the 6 chord in F sharp major, which is the D sharp minor chord, is the 2 chord in C sharp major. Notice the pattern. As we go through the circle of fifths, each major sharp key shares chords with the next major sharp key in line. The 1 chord in the first key becomes the 4 chord in the next key. The 3 chord of the first key becomes the 6 chord of the next key. The 5 chord of the first key becomes the 1 chord of the next key. The 6 chord of the first key becomes the 2 chord of the next key. Pop quiz. Please pause the video to see if you can answer these questions correctly. Don't worry, the answers are on the next slide. How did you do? Did you get all the answers right? Primary chords. In part 7 of this series, you learned that when using chords to harmonize melodies, there are 3 chords that are most used. Those chords are called the primary chords, or the primary triads, which are the 1, 4, and 5, or the tonic, subdominant, and the dominant. Here are the primary chords in C major. Applying what we learned to a song. Let's take a look at the opening measures of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. What key is it in? And how can you tell? When looking at any piece, we first look at the clef, then the key signature, and then the time signature. It is in treble clef, there are no sharps or flats, and the C at the beginning means common time or 4/4. No sharps or flats means it is either in C major or A minor. We can make this distinction between C major or A minor by taking a closer look at the notes. It begins on C and ends on C, the major tonic note. The notes in between are all part of the C major scale, but not in the order of the scale. It is in the key of C major. Choosing primary chords to harmonize the song. When we look at the first measure, we see that it is C, C, G, G. Therefore, a C major chord can harmonize this measure. The tonic, or one chord, C, E, G. When we look at the second measure, we see that it is A, A, G. Therefore, we can harmonize the A with the F major chord, the second inversion of the subdominant or 4 chord, C, F, A. And the G with the C major chord, the tonic or the 1 chord, C, E, G. And it sounds like this. When we look at the third measure, we see that it is F, F, E, E. Therefore, we can harmonize the F with an F major chord, the subdominant or 4 chord, F, A, C. And the E with the C major chord, the tonic chord or 1 chord, C, E, G. When we look at the fourth measure, we see that it is D, D, C. Therefore, we can harmonize the D with the G major chord, the first inversion of the dominant or 5 chord, B, D, G. And the C with the C major chord, the tonic or 1 chord, C, E, G. And it sounds like this. Let's take a look at the opening measures of Old MacDonald Had a Farm. What key is it in? How can you tell? When looking at any piece, we first look at the clef, then the key signature, and then the time signature. It is in treble clef, there is 1 sharp, F sharp, and 4/4 is listed at the beginning. 1 sharp, F sharp, means it is either in G major or E minor. We can make this distinction between G major or E minor by taking a closer look at the notes. It begins on G and ends on G, the major tonic note. The notes in between are all part of the G major scale, but not in the order of the scale. It is in the key of G major. Choosing primary chords to harmonize the song. When we look at the first measure, we see that it is G, 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 D. Therefore, the G major chord can harmonize this measure, the tonic or 1 chord, G, B, and D. When we look at the second measure, we see that it is E, E, D. Therefore, we can harmonize E with the C major chord, the second inversion of the subdominant or 4 chord, E, G, C. And and the D with the G major chord, the tonic or one chord, G, B, D. And it sounds like this. When we look at the third measure, we see that it is B, B, A, A. Therefore, we can harmonize the B with the G major chord, the tonic or one chord, G, B, D. And the A with the D major chord, the first inversion of the dominant or 5 chord, F sharp, A, D. When we look at the fourth measure, we see that it is just G. Therefore, we can harmonize the G with the G major chord, the tonic or one chord, G, B, D. And it sounds like this. Pop quiz. Please pause the video to see if you can answer these questions correctly. Don't worry, the answers are on the next slide. How did you do? Did you get all the answers right? Is there a key change? Let's take a look at this little piece that has a key change. What key does it start in? How can you tell? When looking at any piece, we must first look at the clef, then the key signature, and then the time signature. It is in treble clef. There are 2 sharps, F sharp and C sharp, and 4/4 is listed at the beginning. 2 sharps, F sharp and C sharp, means it is either in D major or B minor. We can make this distinction between D major or B minor by taking a closer look at the notes in the first measure. The first measure begins on D and ends on D. The notes in between are all part of the D major chord. It is in the key of D major. When we look at the second measure, we will notice that it goes D, F sharp, A, G sharp, A. G sharp is not in the key of D major, but instead it is part of the next key in line, A major, with 3 sharps, F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp. The third measure stays in A major, with A, C sharp, E, D, C sharp, B, A. Then the fourth measure goes back to D major with the notes A, G, F sharp, E, D. Notice the G is now G natural. Harmonizing the key change. We can harmonize the first measure with the D major chord, the tonic or one chord, D, F sharp, A. We can then harmonize the second measure, also with the D major chord. This time it becomes the subdominant or 4 chord of A major, D, F sharp, A. And then we go to the E major chord, the dominant or 5 of A major, E, G sharp, B. And then we arrive at the A major chord, the second inversion of the tonic or 1 chord of A major, A, C sharp, E. And it sounds like this. We can harmonize the third measure with the A major chord, the tonic or 1 chord in A major, A, C sharp, E. Then the D major chord, the second inversion of the subdominant or 4 chord in A major, A, D, F sharp. And then go to the dominant or the 5 chord of A major, E, G sharp, B. Back to the tonic or 1 chord in A major, A, C sharp, E. Then the fourth measure is back in D major with the tonic chord or 1 chord, D, F sharp, A. the subdominant or 4-chord G, B, D, back to the tonic or 1-chord D, F sharp, A, to the dominant or 5-chord A, C sharp, E, ending on the tonic or 1-chord D, F sharp, A. And it sounds like this. Please review what you learned. Key signatures are an important clue for what notes or chords to use in a piece. Primary chords, 1, 4, and 5, are most used when harmonizing a piece. Pieces can modulate or change from one key to another closely related key, usually the dominant or 5 of the first key. Thank you for viewing. Feel free to go back in this video to review what you learned. Stay tuned for more Theory with Odessa.